this is Liz from People I Think Are Cool, a bi-weekly podcast where I interview my favorite creatives from across the globe. If you're looking for a dose of creative inspiration, then go to peopleithinkarecool.com or subscribe to People I Think Are Cool on iTunes and Stitcher.
You like film, from cult to classic, from blockbuster to B-movies. And there just isn't that one place with all the fan fervor and passion that's covering the kind of mad, diverse brilliance that you love.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
ITMODmini.com is that fan-built movie nirvana just for you, featuring the sweet, sweet writings of the wife dork herself. ITMODmini.com. Go there. Be the best you can be.
The official podcast of the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester.
Podcast. Joining us is Brian Young, the Turtle Dork.
Hello, everybody.
And also joining us is Lisa Gullickson, wife dork.
Trust.
And Brad Gullickson, mouth dork.
Let's boo-boo.
Oh. And I'm your host, Darren Smith, the Disco Dork, and welcome to the ITMODcast podcast.
Still awesome cast.
Still awesome.
Still awesome, man. It's still awesome.
It
hasn't stopped being awesome.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen.
It's been a while since we've been back to the Still Awesome. We've given you a little break because of Fantastic Fest last weekend, Psychorama.
Yep.
But Attack the Block, we're screening it October 28th.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm excited. Of course, we've seen this movie a bunch of times, but to see it on the big screen again, for me, it'd be my second time on the big screen, but I'm excited. I'm really excited about this one.
Darren's hosting. Are you going to get that BMX, Darren?
Man, I'm still looking for someone with a BMX bicycle that I can borrow just for this screening. And if you're within the sound of my voice and you have a BMX that you can loan out, please get at me on social media so we can work something out. It would make this screening awesome. Anyway.
Yeah, and because you already have the katanas.
Yeah, I got the swords and
that.
stuff and bandanas. Yeah, I got the cap and all that. I just need a bike. But in the meantime, what we're doing this particular episode, we're going to talk about Nick Frost, who is an ITMOD favorite here at the podcast, and he has a role in Attack the Block. He plays Ron, who is the tenant of Ron's weed room, which plays a very important part in the story, or at least it's an important setting for the story. So
I think he in Attack the Block, he is like the closest thing these boys have to a parental figure? ?
Yeah,
he definitely has kind of a paternal, familial affection towards them that is very sweet.
Well, and the weed room becomes kind of a bunker against the invading force of these black furry creatures.
Yeah.
And it's like a hub for them.
Right.
And if you're going to hold up in a room, it doesn't help to have like tons and tons of weed around you.
Yeah. And
it helps.
Nick Frost is he's huge at the very least within the geek community. From films like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and World's End. But he also, and I have admittedly not seen this show, but he also became big from a show called Spaced, which predates his feature film work.
You have to watch Spaced.
Yeah.
Spaced is like, it's such a great little show. It's the perfect show to like put on, like if you're snowed in, the winter is coming.
Right.
If you're snowed in, it's the kind of thing you can just throw on and watch all the way through.
Brian, have you seen
heard
it?
That's where, no, I haven't seen Spaced, but I've heard that's where kind of Nick Frost, along with Simon Pegg and oh goodness, his name is losing me. Edgar Wright. I'm so sorry, Edgar, if he's listening to this podcast.
He
Thank
sure
you.
is.
But yeah,
leave us 5 stars, Edgar Wright.
Yes, please. But yeah, I know this is where they all kind of got their start before they went into the Cornetto trilogy, and knowing that this is where they got their start and where Edgar Wright started and started to kind of hone in on his style and his craft, and working with those two. Of course, we've seen all three of them at Comic-Con. yeah, I want to go back and watch that show, Spaced.
It's a great show. It's where Simon Pegg originated his Phantom Menace rant.
Oh,
a rant
okay.
that he now regrets
Really?
unleashing upon the world. But guess what? It's accurate, brutal, and hilarious. What's interesting about Spaced is that the relationship between the characters that Simon Pegg and Nick Frost inhabit don't at all relate to the character dynamics that you see in their later
They're
films.
they're like aging raver kids who like are trying to kickstart their adulthood and failing.
Are there friends in the show?
Yeah.
Kind of like the same dynamic with the Cornetto?
Nick Frost is kind of playing a character. He plays like a conspiracy theorist gun nut
He's
type
a little
guy.
bit more of an antagonistic character than what we see in the Cornetto trilogy. But when they are on screen together, they are wonderful, and you can understand why they would go to do the genius that is Shaun of the Dead.
I see. So you could see that chemistry in that show.
I think Spaced is essential viewing if you dig on those 3 films.
Nice.
So Shaun of the Dead comes out, and Nick Frost plays Ed in that film. Brian, was this your first? This is your first experience with Nick Frost in this film, or had you seen him in other stuff?
I believe so. I believe so. I believe the first time Nick Frost came across, I was experienced to him, was through the Cornetto trilogy, or it's kind of vague, either that or Paul, because I came to the Cornetto trilogy a little bit late. But I did see them, I think, chronologically, because I saw World's End in theaters, but I think I went back and saw Shaun of the Dead. But I want to say my first experience was with Paul, but I do remember seeing Shaun of the Dead, and I definitely liked kind of like his kind of lazy boy, kind of like free spirit character. And again, going to this chemistry with Simon Pegg, how they played off each other. And you really see the heart between those 2 characters, and I think Nick Frost is a big part of that chemistry that they have in that film.
Yeah, Shaun of the Dead was certainly my first experience with Nick Frost.
Okay.
And what I love about his performance is he's such a millstone, around Simon Pegg's character of Sean.
Right.
Sean he cannot grow up. He cannot advance in his relationship because he's tied to his youth and his relationship with Ed.
Yeah.
And the tragedy of that relationship that unfolds as the zombies are unleashed upon England.
Yeah.
Nick Frost has that ability to be this disgusting, awful human being, but still lovable.
Yeah.
So you feel the pain of Simon Pegg needing to remove himself from this cancerous relationship so that he can have a loving relationship with his girlfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my introduction to them was through Spaced, because I was a huge fan of Black Books in college. So Black Books is the Dylan Moran show where we see Dylan Moran in
Shaun
of the Dead. He plays the kind of nerdy friend, which is kind of a bizarre role for Dylan Moran. Not that this is the Dylan Moran is still awesome, which he is. His stand-up is super great. So I went naturally from Black Books happened in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Space started out in 1999. So I watched all of Spaced. I fell in love with it. And somewhere amidst Spaced, I think I got introduced to Shaun of the Dead. I'm not entirely sure.
I'm so jealous that you saw Spaced before Shaun of the Dead. So you experienced your relationship with Nick Frost in the proper chronological order.
Right. But I like how Nick Frost, when he is doing a project, there is something essentially Nick Frostian about him. Like, to me, I feel like his character in Spaced is the most different from what from other roles he's played.
Right.
But at the same time, he still has this kind of element of, he's weird, but he's my friend and he's around and there's nothing really we can do about it.
Yeah.
And as I see Nick Frost bubble up in like Tomb Raider, for example, we were talking before we started started recording, like when you see Nick Frost bubble up in something, it's always welcome.
Yeah.
I'm always so happy to see him.
Yeah. He does kind of have that warmth about him that when you see him pop up in cameos, you're like, oh, Nick Frost.
I like that dude.
Yeah. That's cool.
Another great place to get a beautiful insight into the origins of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost's relationship is Simon Pegg's utterly delightful autobiography called Nerd Do Well, A Small Boy's Journey to Becoming a Big Kid. It's been a while since I read it. This book came out in 2012. And I read it when it came out, but it's super funny. It goes back to the beginnings of their relationship and their, bar life and how their friendship turned into this kind of creative partnership. It's kind of it's a lovely little story and it's a fun read.
Nice.
I think you can't talk about Nick Frost without talking about, his relationship with Simon Pegg. Without, the Cornetto trilogy is the cornerstone to his pop culture mass, right? Like
if you look at his big four on his IMDb page, it's number 1, Shaun of the Dead, number 2, Paul, and number 3, World's End. But number 4 is Attack the Block.
Right.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
But within the Cornetto trilogy, each role he takes on is radically different from the others.
Yeah.
But I think that it has this core narrative of you don't want to get rid of this guy.
Yeah, and I mean each one of those films is about friendship, right? Now the friendship that happens in Hot Fuzz is very different than what you see in Shaun of the Dead. Butterman, PC Butterman, is a movie maniac. He's obsessed with what he sees on his television, and he wants to live that Michael Bay lifestyle.
Yeah.
So when this badass cop comes to town, he wants to put what he's seen on the TV on the life in front of him. And he wants to then attach himself. He wants to be the Johnny Utah to his Patrick Swayze, or vice versa. I don't understand Point Break.
Oh, don't say that.
No, I love it. I just don't know if I understand the character dynamics. And so that Butterman, he's initially such a pathetic looking character until the film starts to peel back the layers and you realize that he is a son who misses his mother, who's been dominated by his father, and is desperate for some kind of human connectivity in the form of Simon Pegg. And as that relationship develops over the course of Hot Fuzz, and they bond through movies, through guns, and through this insane conspiracy plot involving the town and the cult and what have you. It's a really endearing relationship, but one that is endearing in a different way than what we saw in Shaun of the Dead. And so if you wanted Shaun of the Dead Part 2, Hot Fuzz is not that.
That's not that. Yeah, it's interesting you said that too, because going to your point as far as like the dynamic in Shaun of the Dead and talking about the themes of that as well, of course we see the role reversal as far as like with the world, specifically with the World's End and Shaun of the Dead, where I think the theme is still dealing with that idea of letting go of your past and still being tied to your past. But yet we see Nick Frost do that on the opposite end of that, where in Shaun of the Dead, he's the one guy that's kind of holding Simon Pegg back, but in World's End, he's playing the opposite role, and I think he does a tremendous job. So you see the dynamics that they have and how good he is as an actor to be able to play both sides of kind of that similar type of friendship and that similar type of theme.
But in the World's End, as a fan of these characters, a fan of these performers, it's a hard film to adjust to because Nick Frost is such a button-up character, and it's not until the Pink Hulk comes out,
Yes.
when he finally does get a beer in him,
Yeah.
that you go like, oh yeah, this is the Nick Frost that we love.
Yeah, but to see that kind of rage, or to see like who he used to be as a younger man kind of bubbling up, and he's trying to stay kind of buttoned down, with him with the button-up shirt and looking proper. But when he gets that one drink and he does unleash that Hulk-like, rage, it's cool to see him kind of be able to play, even within that one film, he's able to play both sides of that. So I thought that's pretty cool.
That's probably my favorite performance of Nick Frost. Within The World's End.
I love that one. Yeah.
Darren, where did you come to him? Did you come to him through Shaun of the Dead?
I did come to him through Shaun of the Dead, and yeah, I mean, everything that you all said is true. I mean, he just has that personality to where he is going to be the most memorable thing about that scene or that film, and to me, he stood out the most. And so, and with Hot Fuzz, with me being a action movie junkie and basically having his character embody, my fandom of those types of films, it was really cool to see someone like him be that guy, represent me or what have you. And all of the subsequent films that he's in, because I've only seen him in the Cornetto trilogy. He popped up in I want to say the Snow White and the Huntsman, and maybe the sequel. I can't remember the sequel.
Yeah, no, he's in the sequel.
And then he has obviously Attack the Block, but then he has like some cameos and things where I don't even know if he's credited for a lot of that stuff. Like he was in that he's in the Grindhouse. Don't. Yeah, he's in Don't.
He's great in that.
Yeah,
he's the baby eater.
Yeah.
Because did Edgar Wright direct that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which he needs to make that movie. That'd be so crazy. But I don't know. He just has. He's never played characters that made it hard for me to like that person. You know what I mean? Like he's always, you just get a sense that there's a large part of Nick Frost in all these characters that he's playing. He just comes across as a really warm and genuine person, and so all of his characters reflect that. So but Shaun of the Dead was my initial encounter with him, and I've been a fan of his ever since.
And like, was the first film that was not directed by Edgar Wright, at least that was the first significant film, Paul?
Yes,
I want to say it was.
And I don't know how you guys feel about that movie, but I actually really enjoy that film. Of course, there's that nostalgic connection to Comic-Con and seeing those guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's not technically filmed within the convention center. No. They do a recreation of it, but they film outside of the San Diego Comic-Con. And I can't help but appreciate their celebration of nerddom, even if it's sometimes mocking within Paul.
It's interesting because I think that film came out in 2011.
It did,
which was the first year that we went to Comic-Con.
Right.
And I think I saw this after we went.
Correct.
And I think this may have been because I was late to the game. I think this was my first experience with Nick Frost, and I liked the dynamic, and I actually liked that movie.
It's written by Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. They co-wrote that film.
Yeah. So then going back, like retrospectively going back, and then now watching the Cornetto trilogy and seeing what Edgar Wright was able to do with the two of them and their chemistry, looking at, I guess, those 4 films together, Paul does kind of feel like, the stepchild film. So even though I still enjoy that movie, but there is kind of a consistency or a cohesiveness with the direction of that Cornetto trilogy as opposed to Paul.
Sometimes wonder and maybe even wish that Edgar Wright had made that movie.
Me too.
It's not. The script is not as good as anything within the Cornetto trilogy.
Yeah.
But it does feel like, to use your phrase, a stepchild to it.
Yeah.
And I can't help, like, if I'm going to plop down, the Simon Pegg, Nick Frost show.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch the Cornetto trilogy, and I'm going to immediately follow it up with Paul.
Yeah.
Does every joke land? No. But, damn it.
Yeah.
3 tits. Awesome.
Oh, wow. All right. So let's talk about him in Attack the Block as Ron. What are everybody's thoughts on his character in this film?
It's so funny when you see the first trailer for Attack the Block, and I think we saw it at Comic-Con the first time.
Because there was a panel that first year we were there,
and it might have been 2011, right?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Nick Frost acts as this seal of approval or this stamp, right? Joe Cornish was buddies with Edgar Wright. They've gone on to write the screenplay for Ant-Man, and they worked on The Adventures of Tintin. And here's Joe Cornish making his first film, and Nick Frost's presence is almost like a thumbs up from Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
Like, this is a film you need to pay attention to. Don't let this one slip by your radar. And I feel like seeing Nick Frost as Ron in the trailers of Attack the Block made me go, yeah, I'm going to check this out.
It connects it. Yeah, you feel that connection. So, yeah.
I also like the fact that he's kind of a grounding character for these children.
Yeah.
They live in such tumultuous and tenuous circumstances, and Nick Frost, Ron, has a safe space for them where they can all come be themselves.
Yep.
He still sees them as children and loves them as children, despite, how they may look when they're approaching you on the street with their faces covered, or, or how much their experiences have aged them out of necessity because they have to provide for themselves. So I think that he lends, he just brings that signature Nick Frost sweetness, and he gives the comfort of having an adult around.
Yeah, that's the word I was going to use, because it feels like in this movie, like Ron's weed room and his apartment is a safe haven for these kids. And even when shit starts to hit the fan, like, they know, okay, we have to get to Ron's weed room. That's almost like the safe house. And it does. Once they get there, they have that comforting feeling. And I think it's not just comforting for those characters, but it's also comforting for us as an audience member that Nick Frost is Ron, that they have to get to him, because he does kind of have that paternal instincts or that paternal feeling for these kids in this movie. So you're right. I think it's a comforting feeling. It's an endearing feeling, not just for the characters within the film, but for the audience, for us as well.
And he has a spirit of equanimity. Like, he treats those kids just like he treats the hipster kid. What is his name? I forget. But like the hipster kid who, drove his dad's nice car to the bad part of the neighborhood to pick up some Brewis to pick up his designer listening to the sound of the police, in his designerly slouchy skinny jeans. He treats everybody as equals, and then when the more, like, I don't want to spoil because we're enticing people to come see this movie, but when more menacing characters kind of enter that space, it feels like a real invasion. It feels like a real, when finally he's put in a position where he has to choose between his business and these kids.
Yeah.
It's a real heartbreaking moment for everybody.
Yeah.
And he plays that extremely well. And like it from his kind of broken demeanor in that scene.
What I like so much about Attack the Block is that, yes, there's the alien invasion, right? But there are these two criminal forces within the block.
Yeah.
There is Ron and his weed room.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like the loving criminal father.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is Hi-Hats.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's the antagonistic, dangerous, scary criminal father.
Yeah.
And then there's John Boyega as Moses and his team. They are stuck in between the two of them.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting dynamic that you don't see played out too often in crime stories. Certainly not in alien invasion stories.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No,
Dude.
no, go ahead. You.
No, I don't know if I don't even know if this rings true, but going to that point, Brad, like looking at not Simon Pegg, sorry, Nick Frost's character Ron, and looking at how he has relationships with Moses and with Hi-Hat, and then what happens between them, it almost has the kind of like this patriarch, this kind of like thing of like gangster films to a degree.
Well, exactly. I
like
think
the
that's,
fight, like the families and like the relationships and how some of that it almost has
Moses
that.
has to choose his path, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like in some ways he's stuck between Hi-Hats and Ron.
Well,
The film doesn't lean into that.
I feel like Ron is somehow like a subsidiary of Hi-Hat. Like I feel like Hi-Hat, like he is like the supplier, but it's part of Hi-Hat's overall distribution. Like, Hi-Hat also, like what he offers Moses is an opportunity for advancement.
Uh-huh.
Where
Whereas
like
Ron
can't do that, and I don't think that's Ron's responsibility. I think like
Nor his intentions. I think.
yeah.
And ultimately Ron's going to be like, what's going on outside my door? Oh, it's still chaos and evil and aliens.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lock up here. Good luck, guys.
Interesting. Yeah. It kind of feels like it follows some of those like gangster movie kind of conventions a little bit too, as far as like that dynamic. It's
like if the
interesting.
aliens didn't drop into the block,
Yeah.
things would have still gone down.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
So, Jaron, this is your pick. What is so extraordinary about Nick Frost's performance in Attack the Block that makes people have to see this movie and know that this movie is still fucking awesome?
Well, that's too easy. And I will say this in closing as we get ready to close this episode out. And that is the bottom line is, this whole conversation, half-hour conversation, which could go on longer about Nick Frost, is had because at the end of the day, he is one of those character actors that whenever they show up, they deliver. They're those reliable character actors. And as reliable as it is, it's a shame that we don't see him a lot more. But our last one of our other previous still awesome episodes was about John Carroll Lynch, and just what a phenomenal character actor he is. And I know the type of acting or the type of roles that John Carroll Lynch takes as opposed to Nick Frost might not be the same thing, but I just mean in regards to the level of reliability. You just know whenever this guy shows up on screen, you always perk up. Those people in the know, those people who are familiar with, actors' faces, even if you don't know the names, when, these guys pop up on the screen, you have a response to that. And I think that it's because, Nick Frost, again, we talked about the type of roles that he takes. I really do feel like, there is a large portion of him in these roles, and it helps that he seems to be a really good guy, and that comes across in his character. So you can sympathize, empathize, or just go along for the ride and buy into these characters because he just seems like a good person, and he's a great actor because he's able to convey his good qualities, his best qualities, and put them into his characters. And so somebody like that in a movie that is just filled to the brim with inventiveness, passion. You got some dope performances from these newcomers, and you have a stellar job by Joe Cornish and his entire team. So all that, and then you have Nick Frost added to the mix. I mean, that's why this movie is still awesome, because of all these things that coalesce to create a wonderful time at the movies, and Nick Frost is a part of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, the tickets are still on sale right now. Again, October 28th at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester. Come out and watch Attack the Block. It was and still is awesome. So yeah, you can follow that guy at the Turtle Dork on Twitter, at the Turtle Dork1 on Instagram, and at Brian William Young on Facebook. Wife Dork can be found at Sidewalk Siren and also at Bake Dork on both Twitter and Instagram. And Brad Gullickson is at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untappd. And I'm Darren Smith on all social medias. I am the Disco Dork. That's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. Get your tickets now. Still awesome. Attack the Block, the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester, ITMODcast. Come out. Watch a cool movie. Thank you all for listening. And until next time.